Hey, good evening. Welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Well, bad rap. The failed driving test. I'm getting all the blame here. Let me explain something. The subtitle for this should be titles, subtitles. And what we have is, we have Beth, who, although I do make up titles and give them to her, she sometimes changes them in subtle ways and adds to them in less than subtle ways, and that's how you get your titles on which to go by for the video. So let's look at her driving. Her driving is good. Her listening, not so good. Okay, so we are in the middle of her driving down the road. Now let me explain something further for you. I consider that driving is pretty damned important because you take other people's lives in your hands, and you should know how to drive a vehicle at the best possible skill available to you, and that usually comes down to correct training. Now she only gets to drive once every so often because we're usually going somewhere and we're not doing the driving thing. Now, why did she say she failed her driving test? Because every time she gets behind the wheel, to her is a test. That's how she sees it. Now you've got to understand that English is not Beth's first language, so she sees things different to you and I as Westerners. Give you an idea, I once said to her that I thought the word cuento was a nice word and a good name, could be a good name, and she laughed me out of the room. She said, cuento is not a name, it's a story. Now, as I remember, that was her loose interpretation, was that it means story. So how could you call somebody story? Well, how can you call a cat golden? You see, she hears things differently, she speaks things differently, and in some indefinable way they often come out magical as far as drawing people to that video. Now, we've come in for a lot of flack at various times about some of the titles that we have, and people can get really hung up on one word. Now, when we used to drive along the road coming from a taffy, we used to pass deep down off to the left of the road as we were passing. We used to see two of the most pitiful houses that you've ever seen. They weren't really houses, they were just rags. Hence the title, The Rag Houses. It just stuck. Now, some titles just stuck. They have a life of their own. But one subscriber said, please do not use the word rag again, and was most offended because of the interpretation that she puts on rag. Well, the kids from the rag house, or rag houses, are called the rag house kids. They know that, they see nothing wrong with that, and they're there every Sunday for me to pick them up and take them to church. So, what about some of the other titles? Well, we have a title called The Skeleton House. And the Skeleton House, it was one of those things that we used to pass every day whenever we went on our projects over at the Grassroots Pastor Gilbert. We built 4 houses over there and sunk a well and brought running water up to, I think, 7 houses as part of an overall project. Now, during that, we built a house for the dancing man. Why would we call it the dancing man? Because the man came to our notice because he was a great dancer. Where would we see that? Not in a pole dancing place, not in a bar. We saw it in church, where during the service, the audience, the congregation would dance. And this was an older man, certainly well into his 50s, who danced great. And it also turned out that his house was pitiful. So we made the House of the Dancing Man. Now, what's another one? The skeleton house. Why did we call it the skeleton house? Because it looked like a skeleton. Why? Because this was an extremely poor family, like most of the ones that we help. 7 children, and they had lost 2 to some terminal illness. 2 of their children were lost, 7 remaining, and all quite small. And please don't teach me about birth control. I know about birth control, and I know that we're in a Roman Catholic country, and I know that that's not my job. My job is, as I said before, and Beth's job is to be first responders. Try to give someone a place to live that they can have a little self-respect. So we used to pass this house, and the people that lived there had managed to put up the frame, and that was just about it. It was a see-through house, except for one part where they put up a piece of plywood which they could hide behind when they went to bed. The skeleton house. We also found the house of the unfaithful husband. We made a house for the family of the unfaithful husband. I think that explains itself. The man had abandoned his family, now had a more comfortable, for him, a more comfortable living with somebody else. A dangerous thing if you're married in the Philippines, because there is such a law as prohibits the act of infidelity. So, excuse me. What are some of the others? The secret house. Gosh, people used to argue with this on this, because at one time we had passed this house that once again the family had built as far as they could, and it needed cladding. It was another skeleton house. But we decided in a moment of whimsy, I should say, got my other teeth in, that perhaps we could just get the Superman team together, get all of the materials together to clad that house, and do it in secret, because the family couldn't live there. They lived in a house that was way on the other side of the hill. So we decided that we would do this, and so it was a secret. So we called it the secret house. Now, the secret house on the mountain, it's on top of a hill, and it enjoys million-dollar views in every direction. Now, the way that it worked out, we didn't get to do that in secret, because we were passing one day when we were already formulating how we were going to do it, and we saw that they'd done it. They'd put the cladding on the bit that we were going to do. So that kind of took away our little plot, because we were going to do it and then just sneak away, not say anything, and leave someone not knowing who had done them a great kindness. That it kind of appealed to our quirky sense of humour, and I'll admit that that's quirky. So we ended up going to see the family, because at one point we were stuck on a hill just very close to where the house was, and the man came out with his wife and helped dig us out. So that formed a bond, and we went to see them, and we looked at the house, saw what was needed, and we were able to raise the funds to do that. That was a man and his wife who drove a tricycle, one of the what I call commercial tricycles, like a big metal basket which he could carry stuff in. So that was how he earned a living, and various other things that he did, like a lot of hilltop people do. So they have 3 children, I think, and 2 of the children come to the same church as we. Now, I'll just repeat that we are not, Beth and I are independent of the church, even though we go there, support it. It is Beth's family, but actually we don't judge whether people are this or that religion. We are non-denominational in our help. So we ended up that we got the funds together, and we worked with the man himself. He turned out that he was a good carpenter, and with the materials there and some good solid help, we got the house finished in no time. And so it remains the secret house on the mountain. Now, we also found, not for a house, but as part of the congregation that we go to, we found the secret village in the mountains. And I can't remember quite how we discovered that, but we went on this particular track. I think what it was is that we had picked up the materials for another job, and it took us onto a new trail. So on a whim we followed that trail. I think this is how it happened. We followed that trail until it finally stopped on top of the hill in the mountains, and it was this tiny village. I think it was because we were doing the bidding of the Sandman Steve, and were giving out mattresses. That's how we found the secret village in the mountains. And as a result of that, a little girl there who is called Lovely, who, if you've looked at the videos, you will see this incredibly cute little girl who is part of a family there, and they all walk to church from there, because even though a road may wind this way and that way and left and right and up and down, sometimes it's quite a short trip to walk, and that's what most of those kids do. So we intend to go back and build some houses there. We have all of these things organized for it. What's another one? Well, there's the house of the single mother, the reunification house, I think it was called. Now, when we started that, we were hoping that the woman who was the single mother was going to be reunited with her husband. That was what we believed at first, but the way that it turned out, that didn't happen. So she was the single mother. So we finished that house. Let me see, what did we do then? Well, we were giving mattresses away when we found the blind man. And the blind man was living in, well, Pitiful doesn't handle that. We actually saw what looked like a chicken shed that had seen better days. That gives you an idea. And we went, and there was a man in there, and he was blind. Difficult to explain what an impact this has on you. The roof didn't hold water. It didn't hold back the water, and the floor of his house was actually muddy because it was a dirt floor. The water had just come through, and he had a piece of plastic which was spread out over his bed. It was a tearjerker, and as I walked away from that house, I said to Beth, no matter what happens, we're going to build a house for that man. And we built a house for that man, and since then he is such a charming man. He was a taxi driver, and he became blind. I really don't know why. One of these days I promised myself I will learn the language so that I don't have to rely on Beth to translate these things, and I can ask my own questions. Anyway, he was a taxi driver in Cebu, and now he's blind. He never complains. He's always in good spirits, amazingly. And Tita, a lady who has been a subscriber with us, I think almost from the start, if not the start, said that she wanted to adopt him as her grandfather, and that she did. And every month she sends us money, and we go down to the local Sari-sari store, and rather than give that money to one of the big department stores, which would be very handy to be able to go there and do that, we don't do that. We go to a little Sari-sari store that sells pig feed and chicken feed and groceries, and we go there and we give them the amount of money that we have to spend. Like if it's 1,500 pesos, we go and we say 1,500 pesos, make a box with the provisions that you would be able to do for that money. And the man uses his knowledge of what people buy, and he makes it up with the basis of canned goods, coffee, some washing powder, stuff like that, toothpaste and soap and all of that kind of thing. We always get plenty of that, so we never have to buy that for him. It's already there. But that and some clothes. Tita said that she wanted to see some clothes on him that were nice, so we didn't actually buy those, or I don't think anyway, because we always have plenty of clothes that have been sent to us in our balikbayan boxes. So what's another title? Another title would be, let me see, I'm running out of them. Well, the one that people did take exception to was the terrible house. The terrible house was next to the crab factory. It almost sounds like a John Steinbeck story. This man didn't spend much time in his house because it was just like a load of... maybe it had been a house at one time, but this is an aged man, and he had lost his wife. So lost his wife of a great number of years, and now he was alone. I had to get on my knees to actually peer inside the house, and it was terrible. And I got out and I said to Beth, when we were talking about doing a house, I said, that house is terrible. And so it became the terrible house. And this later, without Beth, once again, she doesn't have the same significance as other people have. And so he became the terrible man. So she said we were going to take groceries to the terrible man. Well, of course he's not terrible, but that was just the way that it worked out. And as I said, somebody took great exception from their perception of rag, the rag house, and said it shouldn't be that way. Some other people didn't like our title, Blind Girl Sarah, and she was the coconut husking queen. Now my take has always been on it, we need people to look at our videos because that's what we do. So are we supposed to say Project 16, Project 1, 3, 5? Oh, wouldn't it be riveting to be doing that? And I'm sure that you would all say, oh, I really must look at Project 15. No, we don't do that. We give it a name. And some names stick. And no, they're not politically correct. We made we made a house for Desiree, the crippled Filipino beauty. we made a house and tried to get Nisa, the Filipina, let me see, the fragile Filipina beauty. And people took to those names, and a few felt that they were politically incorrect and tried to get us to change them. And then they gave us something that would never have worked. So we stick to our guns, and while it's not always perfect, while it's not always 100% correct, it's what we do. And that's what brings you to this channel, is what we do. Now, if it was not successful, if it was not the right thing to do, then we wouldn't have any subscribers, would we? They'd have all said, oh, no thanks. So we do what we do because we think it will attract attention, like the house of the paralyzed man. The paralyzed man was indeed a paralyzed man, bedridden and living once again in terrible conditions in a house that was falling down. And we started off by saying, this was early days, maybe we could just get him a bed. Well, the way it turned out, he died, and his family were left in this pitiful house. So we did Desiree, the Filipina, crippled Filipina beauty. We did her a house first, and then we did the crippled, the paralyzed man's house, the family of the paralyzed man. And next door there were 4 little girls. I thought, and so did Beth, we thought that there were 3 little girls. And they are, Angelica is the eldest, let me see, Yan Yan, Bajin and Badui. Bajin, when we asked her what she wanted to eat once when she was at the church, I believe it was, Beth said, what would you like to eat? And she kept saying, spaghetti. So she became Spaghetti. Her sister, who is almost like a twin, is the youngest, and she is Badui. Badui. These are not easy names to remember because the frame of reference is so obscure. But anyway, even though it was 4 little girls, the name, the 3 little girls' house, still stuck. So we've had many like that. We built wells. We've got the, let me see, Lolo and Lola, the old couple. And the old couple wanted a house and came to us when we had built a house for the family of what was then called the Leaning House. And the Leaning House, it was called the Leaning House because instead of being like this, it was like that, and it was about to fall down. So we called it the Leaning House. When we finished the Leaning House, we passed a tiny, tiny little, another little chicken coop again, and this old lady came out. Difficult to say no. And she said that she wanted a house. She said, I would be very happy with a very small house, but something that we could die in with dignity. How could you refuse? Her husband is almost, well, not really as animated and as alive as the Alzheimer's man that we are now working with. He's pretty well out of it, and the chances are that may be the wish come true of that lady, because we built them a nice house and now they seem to be doing fine on it. So we built lots of other houses, and the titles, what's in a title? Well, it's what we do. So the titles, did I write down a title? No, I didn't. I've gone off the subject again. It just seems to be something that I do. So, thank you for watching. It's 25 minutes, but these late night meanderings are always kind of like that, aren't they? And sometimes people do want to know some of the back history, which I guess that's what this was about. History past and the future in planning. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. If you've enjoyed what you see, please like, comment and subscribe. Bye for now.